Thank you, Judge. First of all, let me just apologize to the court for the level of my voice before we broke.
Well, that's neutral.
So,
But you don't have to apologize because these are subjects about which people feel strongly, and the tone of your voice is something that conveys what the force with which you want to make your advocacy. So I don't have any problem with it at all.
I appreciate that. Nonetheless,
You've been in the least bit disrespectful, so.
I appreciate that, Judge. Nonetheless, I was a little louder than I would have liked to have been. But as I glanced through this article, did the court give an exhibit number to that?
I didn't give it an exhibit number. I told the clerk to make it part of the file, but we'll make it Exhibit A.
Okay. Exhibit A, Judge, I would just note a few things. On my copy, I don't have the exact same copy as the court, but maybe they printed the same. It's page 4 of my copy, and it says Dr. Sly reached 3 important conclusions. Number 1, they confirmed the absence of ethylene glycol in blood tests performed before Ryan Stallings' untimely death. That's an area in which Dr. Long gave the opinion that there was ethylene glycol in blood tests. I think that goes to his qualifications regarding ethylene glycol. Several paragraphs down, referring to Dr. Piero Rinaldo, Dr. Rinaldo says, well, here's what the article says. Rinaldo was highly critical of the original tests performed on Ryan's blood serum. Quote, the quality of the tests was highly unacceptable. They were unbelievably out of this world. And so, in terms of...
Is he talking about Cardinal Glennon, or is he talking about
I believe
Dr. Long?
I believe he's talking about all the tests.
Are you
I ran into Dr. Rinaldo in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, and I believe that it certainly applied to Dr. Long's tests is all I can say on that. And Judge, on all these...
The original tests, we're not, the original tests...
No, I'm going to let I'll tell you what, I interrupted him, and I wish I hadn't interrupted him. Go ahead.
And I can tell the court, I don't think in terms of cross-examining or exercising Mr. Jensen's right to confrontation that I have to convince anybody that I know the entire truth as to what happened. Just as when I cross-examined David Thompson about a false statement that I believe he made to the probation officer, I really don't know, and I didn't try to investigate whether the probation officer was right or Mr. Thompson was right.
I'm going to interrupt you again in spite of my promise. And I realize that I must not have made myself clear before in terms of what my problem with the article. I'm certainly not suggesting that this article is right and that you're wrong, that's why I made the point that I'm not suggesting you misrepresented anything to the court. I'm saying that there are differences of opinion about the various roles of people in this, and that's why the rule exists. Because we don't want to get into a trial of the Stallings case. Because there may be 2 sides to that Stallings case, and Dr. Long's role may be very great or very, very small. And I don't know. Because the courts recognize, the law recognizes over centuries, literally, that the court will be doing a huge disservice to the pursuit of truth by getting into an extensive discussion about this in the context of the state against Mark Jensen. It limits the evidence to very, very restricted purposes. And that's the point I was trying to make, is I don't want to get into whether Dr. Long did or did not do something really below professional standards in the Stallings case.
Well, but first and foremost, I'm not relying on 90608, although I think that's a rule that allows me to get in at least some of this material, but it really does just go to its simple relevance and the right to confrontation. He's been propped up as the big expert. I've done 8 to 10,000 tests a year or whatever it is. I testify in all these cases. He looks at the jury. He's the premier toxicologist is how he gets painted by the prosecution. And I ought to be able to undercut that impression by pointing out another case in which I mean, I certainly believe, but I think it's not like I'm alone in this regard, that there was a major mistake made in that case. And I agree with the court. I mean, I won't be bringing in all the exhibits from the Stallings case or anything else here, but I think I ought to be able to inquire as to what occurred here. And Mr. Jamboys, I'm sure, will do a wonderful job in asking him the questions so he can explain what happened in that case. And I mean, let's just say there is no dispute at all. He made a big error in that case. I mean, it was just real easy factually, and he made a big error and he's acknowledged it. Why wouldn't I, just at that starting point, why wouldn't I be able to say, you made a big mistake in this other very serious case? And he says, yes, I did. And the jury takes that for what it's worth. And
For the same reason we can't do it with the defendant. Guy is on trial for armed robbery, except under circumstances where it's appropriate, we can't introduce evidence that he committed an armed robbery once before because it's too probative, not probative, it's too probative. Tells us more than we need to know.
Well, I don't think so, because this goes to this man's qualifications. How can he come in and be trumped up as such this great expert when he's had another ethylene glycol homicide prosecution?
And a pure logical debate, I can't argue with you, except that the rule recognizes that we don't. Then it would be fair, if I let you do that, that it would be fair for Mr. Jamboys to call witnesses who would leap to the defense of Dr. Long.
I'm not asking to call. I'm not asking to call the witnesses on that. What I'm asking to do is cross-examine, exercise Mr. Jensen's right to confrontation and his due process rights to a fair trial, to ask Dr. Long questions about his qualifications and how those qualifications affected his performance in the Stallings case, and also how that may affect his bias and motive here, because his reputation, I believe, was sullied in that case, and he'd be concerned, given the errors he admitted to in this case, that by acknowledging bigger mistakes, his reputation would severely suffer. And so I think bias and motive and simple relevance, that you can ask people about qualifications. I would cite Lind, L-I-N-D-H, v. Murphy, Seventh Circuit case in which habeas was granted on confrontation grounds. I acknowledge the facts aren't exactly along the same lines, but there was a confrontation clause violation when, in a state of Wisconsin case, the defense was denied the opportunity to cross-examine a psychiatrist about information they had that the psychiatrist had sexually abused some of his patients, was about to lose his medical license, and stood a chance of going to prison, I guess, on the sexual abuse. But in that case, again, there was a bias or motive on the part of Dr. Roberts in that matter, and the court found, on the much stricter habeas review standards, that Mr. Lynn should get a new trial. That was that homicide case in Madison, Wisconsin, in the courthouse.
Well, I would say that, as is already evident from my remarks, I'm not going to allow you to do an extensive cross-examination of Dr. Long about the Stallings case. If you wish to ask him questions about whether or not, and if there's a basis in fact for you to do so, whether or not he came under fire for his actions or testimony in the Stallings case, and whether or not that is affecting him. Well, I don't want to tell you how to frame your questions. I think there may be a legitimacy in your claim that bias would be a fair inquiry. But of course, under this rule, you're going to have to take his answer.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
I object to that. I object to counsel being permitted to examine this witness regarding the Stallings case, any aspect of the Stallings case. And if there is going to be examination of this witness, I request that it first occur outside the presence of the jury, so this court has something in the order of an offer of proof as to what he's going to be asking him and what the answer is going to be. Because I will tell you this, it is unfairly prejudicial and it is completely irrelevant. And I have talked to Dr. Long about this case. He did not falsify any exhibits. He did not alter any exhibits. He won't testify. He will deny that he altered any exhibits. So why should he be asked that? Because he's not going to be permitted to bring any extrinsic evidence in about it. Now, if he's saying, well, then, Dr. Long is committing perjury here, then I say we do that outside the presence of the jury. And if he wants to get him charged with perjury, he can do it. But it's not something that comes up in front of the jury. There's nothing that supports this proposition, and there's not one word that this court has heard from defense counsel which should cause this court to believe there's anything about the Stallings case which is relevant.
Well, he says there have been professional literature in which doctor was accused of.
Well, I don't think I said that.
It
sounds like it's going in a different direction.
Pardon me?
Yeah. There's a journal article that just says, that concludes this was not ethylene glycol. This woman was wrongly convicted.
Doctor was.
It's a professional article. They're not out to disparage anybody on that
Well,
stuff. They're saying it was
I
wrong.
misunderstood what you were saying before, because I certainly took it to be an article that was critical of Dr. Long's performance in the case.
Judge, here, let me, and I certainly don't object to the suggestion of Mr. Jamboy's that we question Dr. Long. That maybe assist me in making the offer of proof. So I think that's probably a good idea, but let's see. This is page 175, deposition of Dr. Long, December 21st, 1991, in Patricia and David Stallings versus University Hospital, Inc., Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital, Smith Kline Beecham Laboratories, Anthony Scalzo, MD, Robert Lynch, MD, Chris Long, PhD.
You've got enough of the case, we can find it.
All right. Page 175. Beginning line 10, question, doctor, do you remember testifying in the criminal trial? I'll show you the transcript, page 440, when Mr. McElroy, that was the prosecutor, gave you State's Exhibit 15. That State's Exhibit 15 was a fair and accurate representation of the actual graphs of the run being the mass spec, I believe. Answer, yes, sir. Question, and what was your answer? Answer, yes, sir. Question, and nevertheless on the graphs, State Exhibit 15, you had whited out 2 separate numbers or 3 separate numbers were deleted. Answer, that was asked of me by Mr. McElroy, who asked me to white out numbers. Doctor, answer, and it is a fair question. Is it an accurate representation of what the actual graph showed, or is it a different representation of what the actual graph showed? Answer, well, the numbers are whited out. Question, it's different, isn't it? Well, and then there's some objections, but what we have there is, and then later on, let me go to line 20, page 176, question, the actual graph, am I correct, sir, does contain 3 numbers that you whited out on State's Exhibit 15, the actual graph? Answer, it does contain 3 whited out, yes, sir. And on State's Exhibit 15, you whited out those numbers, correct? Answer, yes, sir, I did. So that's one of the areas. And they presented to the jury as a perfect match. Here's the standard.
Well,
here's the graph. And to white out numbers on an exhibit and say that's a fair and accurate representation of what was printed out by the mass spec. Yeah, I think that's. I think.
I don't know if it is or not. I know that you're equating, they're whiting out numbers with a purposeful, creating an exhibit that purposefully misrepresents what the graph is supposed to depict, and I don't know whether that's true or not. We're getting bogged down here. I think that you're agreed, and I think it's a good suggestion that we conduct the inquiry outside the presence of the jury, and you can make your offer of proof that way.
Well, Your Honor, except you're pointing to an empty witness chair and Dr. Long went to lunch.
Well, then call Mr. Wojt back in. We'll take Dr. Long later.
Dr. Long's here now? Okay, well then I guess Dr. Long's available.
Well, which do you want to do? Do you want to do Dr. Wojt and Mr. Wojt and Dr. Long will wait?
Well,
Maybe we should take Mr. Wojt now, and when he finishes,
I would say, I like the idea of this, Your Honor. I'd like to do Mr. and Mrs. Voigt, and then at some time around 4 o'clock,
no,
let the
we're
jury
stopping at
go.
4.
Pardon me?
We're ending today at 4.
Today at 4?
So I may end up with the jury at 3 and take Dr. Long then.
Well, Your Honor, I'd very much like to finish Mr. Voigt.
Ask Mr. Wojt and the jury to come in, please.
You lived next door to the Jensens prior to Julie's death for about 6 years, is that right?
I think so, maybe even more.
Even
So
more?
I would say 6 years, yes.
I wasn't clear whether you moved in, and I had understood you to say 1992. Was it earlier?
Well, I think so. I don't remember. I will have to look in, when did I move in there? But I would say 92.
During that time, you had lots of contacts with both Mr. Jensen and Mrs. Jensen.
Yes, I did.
You did things like go fishing with Mark Jensen, right?
Yes, we went, I would say 2-3 times fishing.
And your families, especially in the summer, might cook out together.
There was a couple times that we had dinners together. Spent some times in his backyard by the pool.
You'd speak with him on a regular basis,
Yes,
right? Talked with him hundreds, if not thousands of times
Yes.
over those years?
yes,
Got along with him fine as a neighbor?
yes,
You had a chance to observe him with his children, correct?
yes, I did.
And fair to say that he was a good father?
I would say yes, he was a good father.
He was a loving father?
I would say yes. I see him always playing with the kids, spending a lot of time with them.
You'd see them, you were aware that he'd take his son David fishing, right?
Yes.
You'd see him outside swimming in the pool, right?
Well, I would hear them swimming in the pool, laughing and, screaming. That was, yes.
They'd walk the dog together, right?
Yep.
Kind of thing. And prior to the fall of 1998, you really didn't observe much in the way of problems in the Jensen family, right?
Major problems or just problems?
Yeah, you didn't see any major problems,
No,
right?
I did not.
In terms of, and you had, on a number of occasions, you saw Mark's interactions with Julie Jensen, right?
Yes.
You never saw Mark be physical with Julie, right?
I never did see.
And in her conversations with you, she never made any such claim like that, right?
She never did.
During the 6 or more years that you lived next door to the Jensens, you never even really saw Mark angry, did you?
There was a couple of times he was upset. We had an argument.
Maybe 2 times?
Yeah, I mean, the times that I remember, that I recall it, he was very angry. I remember when I was buying a lot next door from them, that he had to sell it because he lost a job and Julie wasn't working at the time. And she could have been working.
So he was upset in 1991 about during some time of financial distress.
Yes.
Is that right?
Correct.
And even then, you didn't hear him yelling or screaming about that, right?
No.
And did you say there was some other time in those 6 years when you saw him?
Yeah, I think so. There was one of the times I was going into his house. I was coming into his garage inside the house, and at the same time Mark came out, and they had an argument. He was really upset. He was really, pissed, put it this way.
And what is it that made you decide that he was angry?
Well, he told me about it. There was something about a trip family trip. They supposed to go together, and Julie didn't want to go.
So he was upset that he and Julie could not go on a family trip together.
Yeah, he blamed her that she wasn't like his friends' wives, that they will go together with places, and she didn't want to go with him.
And he thought that was important that they go on a trip together.
Yes,
And so those are the two times that you saw Mark Jensen angry in the
that's the times I just will say, yes, I remember.
in the 6+ years that you lived next door to
Yeah.
him. On December 4th, 1999, Mr. Voigt, you spoke with Detective Ratsberg here?
Yes, I did.
Detective Ratsberg wrote a written statement for you, right?
Yes, he did.
And have you also seen a police report that he prepared summarizing your conversations?
I mean, before,
Let's see. He took a statement that he put in writing
Yes.
and you signed it, correct?
yes, I did.
And I'll tell you, I have a police report that summarizes things that you told him on that date.
Okay.
That's not signed by you, it's a police report. Have you seen that police report?
I think so, I did.
And let me just hold it up to you. It looks something like this. Does that ring a bell?
No, not really. It looks like any other page.
Okay. But I mean, do you remember it being typed like this?
No.
Or not? Okay. All right. Did you ever tell Detective Ratsberg that Mark would not speak with you and he always kept to himself?
Yes, I told Mr. Rasberg that for about, I'll say 4 weeks to 5 weeks to Julie's dad, Mark separated himself from me, and I mean, he wouldn't talk to me. He will just ignore it. He will just like didn't exist, even passing me, seeing me.
That was the month of November, basically. Is that right?
Yes.
But during your 7 years, 6 or 7 years you were there, he didn't keep to himself, right?
No, we had a regular conversation. I'll say pretty good neighbors, friends. We talk about different stuff.
During November, it's fair to say that people aren't outside as often as they are in July.
No, I did still see him, because he always was in the front washing the cars, was doing some other thing, but it just, he wasn't there. Like I described it before, I could pass him, 10, 20 feet from him. He will still ignore, like, I'm not there, it doesn't exist.
Well, Mr. Jensen's driveway was not right next to your driveway, correct?
I would say his driveway's got to be probably 35 feet away.
Right. I mean, they're not right next to each other, is what I'm
No,
saying,
they're
Mr. Voigt, right? I mean, it's not like you have shared driveways or driveways that parallel
No,
right
we're
next
not.
to each other. True? And in November, Mark Jensen would work during weekdays, right?
Yes.
And in November, on weekends, it would be much colder than it would be other times of the year, right? Not.
Yes.
And so you'd see him less frequently, fair to say?
Yeah, I did see him frequently, but like I'm saying,
Mr. Voigt,
yeah.
did you see him less frequently in November than other times in the year?
I'll see him on a daily basis.
On a daily basis?
Yes, I see him coming into the house. I see him walking around the yard.
So in November, Mr. Jensen would come home when it was dark in November, wouldn't he, Mr. Voigt?
Yes.
And it would be dark out, and you'd be in your house, right?
Not always.
So in the month of November, you're standing outside when it's dark out, waiting for Mr. Jensen to come home to see if he'll talk to
No,
you?
I wasn't married to him. I didn't wait for him. I just see him there. I saw him pulling his truck. I see him just walking around. It just, to me, was different that we always did have the contact, and there's, like you said, 6, 7 years before, and we had some falls before too, and I always see Mark, we always talk, we always had a good relationship, and then suddenly, it's like everything got cut off.
Okay. Now, one thing that could be the case is you were suspicious based on what Julie had to say to you, right?
Yes, I was suspicious.
And that could have affected your perceptions of Mark Jensen, right?
I really don't know.
I'm sure there are times during those previous 6 years in which Mr. Jensen was in a hurry or something like that, and he wouldn't be as friendly as he was normally, right?
I don't know. He always was friendly. I cannot say he wasn't, even if he was sitting, like you said, it was dark, he will be sitting in his garage, we'll have a chat, he will work on his fishing rods or some other stuff. That was a normal thing. Or he will come up to my garage in the back, he will talk to me about different stuff.
So your claim is every day when Mr. Jensen would come home, you had a conversation with him?
Not every day, but I will say sometimes we'll have twice a day, sometimes we didn't have for 2 days.
Here's my question, Mr. Voigt. In the evening, when Mr. Jensen comes home from work during the month
Yes.
of November, you're claiming that you'd have a conversation with him?
No,
for some
I did
reason?
not have a conversation with him that November. I did not.
What,
But the months before and the years before, yes, I did.
every single night?
Not every single night, like I said. Every other,
Why would
daily,
you-
especially on the weekends.
Why would you be outside in the month of November 1998, Mr. Voigt, at night?
I had my garage in the back of my house. I used to, my hobby is rebuild antique cars. I used to walk all the time back and forth from the house to the garage in the back. And I meet a lot of times Mark passing by the side of the house, on the side of the pool. We met each other a lot.
Mr. Voigt, let me just skip to a different subject for a moment. The Sunday before Julie Jensen passed away, you said you saw her on that day, right?
Yes, I did.
And you saw her going for a walk with Mark
Yes.
and David and Douglas?
I think so, Douglas and a dog. I wasn't sure about the David. Maybe David was going to.
They went for a walk. They went for a walk with the dog and their youngest boy, and
Yeah, I
maybe
think
the
so.
other boy.
Yeah. I don't know if all of them, but I know they went for a walk. Yes.
Then they returned to the house, right?
Yes.
You saw Mark outside playing basketball with his kids.
Yes, he did.
Julie was outside.
Yes, she was.
You thought everything was okay.
Yes, I did.
And Julie walked up to you and your wife, right?
Yes.
And she had her back to Mr. Jensen.
Yes, she did.
You said she was crying.
Yes. She was turning around and I asked her a question if everything was okay. It's all right, back to normal.
And you and your wife pleaded with her not to cry because Mark might see her, right?
Yes.
Because you were afraid that Mark was going to find out that you knew about it, right?
Yes.
So Mark didn't know about it at that time, did he?
About what?
He didn't know that you had had conversations with Mrs. Jensen.
He saw me talking to her.
That's why he was afraid. That's why you were afraid he'd find out, is because he didn't know, right?
About what?
About the conversations.
Well, I had a conversation every day with her, and he knew we were talking to each other because when he even passed, he gives me, such a cold, dirty look that we were talking to each other.
That was your perception, was that he was giving
No, it
you.
wasn't the perception. You can see in somebody's eyes, in the face's expression.
If Mr. Jensen knew, then you wouldn't be afraid that he'd find out, right?
I'm telling what Julie was telling me, and she didn't want Mark to find out about it, that she knew what was going on.
You were afraid that Mark was going to find out that you knew, right?
Yes.
And that's why you were pleading with her not to cry,
Yes.
right? And you had no information and living next door to this man for 6 or 7 years. You had no information whatsoever from personal observation or from what Julie told you that he'd ever been a violent man, right?
Yes.
You'd only seen him angry once or twice, right?
Yes.
In 6 or 7 years?
Yes.
So what did you think Mr. Jensen would do if he found out that you knew Julie was upset?
Objection, how irrelevant, unrelevant.
How would I know what he's gonna do?
Well, I was going to direct you overruled.
I didn't hear your answer, I'm sorry.
How would I know what he's gonna do?
Well, what were you afraid of?
Well, I don't know. I was just afraid. Julie didn't want nobody to know what was going on. When she approached me, she talked to me about this thing. She even told me, don't tell the neighbors across the street or somebody, because she just don't want to find out. Nobody else find out.
Mark had been a reasonable man during those 6 or 7 years, right?
Yeah, but not for the past 8 or 7 weeks before that happened.
Well, you were just saying it was 4 weeks.
What's the difference? 4 or 5 or 6 weeks?
Well,
That was just before that day. The way he acted, the way he walked, when he got this new job, he was like a different man.
This is beyond the scope of the question, Judge.
Objection, I disagree. The answer was responsive.
The answer may stand. Go ahead.
First of all, you testified to 4 weeks, right?
I don't remember that. If it's in it, yes.
Well, that's what you just told Mr. Jamboys when he asked you, right?
Then yes.
Because you said Julie began talking to you maybe 5 or 6 weeks before she died, right?
About that matter, about the problem they had in the family problem between Mark and her.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
She did talk to me before, normally, on a regular basis.
5 or 6 weeks before she died is when she had that conversation, right?
Yes.
And in that conversation, she did not say she was concerned about poisoning, right?
Yes, she was.
In the very first conversation?
Not on the very first conversation, but
Well-
between 5-6 weeks in that time area. I think so. It was on the week or third week before her death. Yeah.
Mr. Voigt, I'm trying to find out what happened at various times, okay? So on the first conversation you had, there was no talk about poisoning.
No, it wasn't talk. It wasn't talk about Mark acting very. They had a lot of arguments that she suspected, she was sure that he was cheating on her, that he had another woman.
Right. And she was very upset and angry about her belief that he had an affair, right?
Yes.
And going back to this Sunday, Mr. Voigt, the
Yes.
Sunday before she died, you'd never seen Mark angry, violent, or yelling at Julie Jensen, right?
Yes.
You'd never seen him get that way with you, right?
Yes.
He had been a good neighbor and friend for 6 or 7 years, right?
Yes.
And when Julie Jensen told you about, I mean, at first you thought these allegations were crazy, right?
No.
When she
I
first
never
told
said
you?
that. No.
Oh, so when she said, I'm fearful about my husband killing me, your first reaction was, oh, I can understand that.
Oh, she never said that.
She never said she was fearful about him killing her?
Yes, she never said that in the beginning. Which time you want me to say it? 3 weeks, 4 weeks? I think so in the third week before her death, she said that. But in the beginning, no, she never did.
So why didn't you go to Mark Jensen and say, What's going on? Your wife is saying some very strange things.
I don't know. I wish I did. I didn't want to interfere with their life. I didn't know what, because she, like I said before to everyone, that Julie didn't believe herself what is going on. This is really he trying to do something to her, or she wants to drive her nuts. That's what she didn't know what's going on herself.
She told you
Yeah.
that she didn't want you to talk to Mark, right?
No, she didn't tell me that.
But she told you not to talk to anybody, right?
Yes.
She told you not to talk to the neighbors, right?
I think so. One of the neighbors, which she specifies, was Carrie Ashley across the street.
You just told me she didn't want you to tell the neighbors, right?
Yes.
You offered her thousands of dollars?
I offered her money.
You testified on direct to
Yes.
thousands of dollars, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Is that true?
Yes, it's true.
You testified that she could go stay at your lake house, right?
Yes.
You offered her to go to the lake house, right?
Yes, I did.
You were willing to have her take her kids to your lake house, right?
Yes.
I mean, if she left, you said you can take the kids, true?
What I told her,
I'm asking you what you said about the kids.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's,
I never said
witness is
Just a minute.
I object to counsel interrupting the witness as he's about to answer the question that the counsel is putting to him.
It's important that you not overspeak each other. Go ahead and ask a question.
She said, what you testified to is that she was worried about the kids, right?
yes,
And you said, you of course can take the kids to the lake house, right?
no. What I said, that I offered Mrs. Jensen the money and the lake house. We never talked about the kids at that time. I told her, get the hell out of the house. That's what I did.
But what was the reason she said no?
The reason she said no, because she was afraid that if she's gonna leave the house, Mark is gonna take away the kids from her.
I thought when
She will
you-
never see the kids again.
I thought when you had this conversation, she didn't say anything about the kids.
No. The conversation was if she will take the kids to the house, lake house.
So during those 6 or 7 years you lived next door, Julie Jensen had a car, right?
She did.
She could come and go as she pleased, right?
Yes,
You saw her come and go every day, all day, right?
yes, I did.
You were aware that she had a checkbook, right?
I wasn't aware of that.
She seemed to she handled the household affairs from what you observed, right?
I seen her going shopping, bringing the grocery home. That's what I did.
She never seemed to be wanting for money, right?
No,
Did you tell Detective Ratzberg on December 4th that you believed Mark was controlling?
yes,
But you can't identify one controlling thing he did during the relationship, can you?
why not?
Well, you previously testified.
Objection, Your Honor. I think the first thing is he needs to ask the witness whether or not he ever observed Mark Jensen engaging in any controlling activity before he starts asking about some prior allegedly inconsistent statement.
Well, I do think that that's probably correct.
Mr. Voigt, what did you ever see Mark Jensen do that was controlling?
I remember one of the things, Julie was on the front doing some gardening work, and she had a big phone hooked up to on the side of her pants right here. And I asked her, what do you do with it? Well, Mark bought this thing for me so he can call me every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so he wants to know where I was, what I was doing.
That's what Julie Jensen told you, right?
Yes.
Did you hear the phone going off every 5 or 10 minutes?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did? And Julie was talking
Not
to
maybe
Mark?
5, 10, but it was half hour. Julie was talking on the phone, and again, Mark will call her.
And you think there's something wrong with a husband calling his wife on the phone?
Well, she made she was upset about it. She was very upset about it.
When was
Because
this?
if she went too far by the road and the phone the reception wouldn't reach, he would get upset. What were you?
When was this?
That was about 2 years before her death.
Okay.
Or a year before her death.
What else did he ever do that?
One of the
Hold on.
things.
Mr. Boyd, hold on, let me clarify my question. What did you ever see? Not what Julie told you. What did you ever see Mark Jensen do that was controlling?
Controlling, what I ever seen, that every time when Mark come home, the whole family always used to be outside. They were playing, they were doing stuff. When Mark pulled to the driveway, it's like everybody disappeared out of the driveway, and they went inside the house, and we didn't see them again.
Could that have been dinner time?
No,
It wasn't dinner time?
I talked to Julie about it, and Julie told me that Mark wants to have his time with the family. It's his time after coming, from work. And a lot of times we ask, what are you guys doing tonight, or what's happening later? She said, well, I don't know, nothing to Mark. She wouldn't make a decision, a statement, till she first talked to the Mark. And that's what made me that he is so controlling. And one of the things was...
There's no question on the floor at the moment.
Objection, Your Honor. Again, counsel's interrupting the witness. The witness is trying to respond to the question.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Go ahead.
Can I say it?
No. He'll ask you another question.
You think there's something wrong with a father who works all day to make money for his family, comes home and wants to spend time with his
Well, now,
kids?
see, this is argumentative. You've asked him why he thought certain things,
Right.
and he's identified them, and now you're asking him to defend them, which he doesn't need to do.
Well,
That's for your argument.
sir, were you asked the following question, and did you give the following answer when you testified on July 5th, 2007, page 54, line 7? Question. My question is, did you ever hear or see him meaning Mr. Jensen, do anything controlling with Julie? Answer, no.
Objection. This is not inconsistent with the witness's testimony, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Did you give that answer?
Yes.
Question, and that was before September 1, 1998, and that was after September 1, 1998, correct? Answer, yes.
Yes.
This information you have all came from Julie, right?
Yes.
You didn't know if what she was telling you about Mark's wants and desires was true, correct?
I believe her.
I didn't ask you that. You didn't know whether it was true.
I didn't know.
She frequently was complaining about the marriage.
Yes, she did.
Did you hear Mark bad-mouthing the marriage?
A few times.
A few times over 6 or 7 years?
I think it's just that summer we had a few conversations about it. I mean, they had the normal things, nothing crazy. He always complained about her cooking or some other stuff. So.
The only time you really saw him upset was at one time in the garage, correct?
Yeah, that's the time I remember at the moment.
You never heard, for example, Mark Jensen demanding that Julie get a job, right?
He told me once,
That he would like Julie to work?
yes,
Did you ever hear him demanding that?
no,
You never heard him talking to Julie about that, right?
correct.
You never heard him insisting that Douglas be in daycare all day, right?
Right.
Sometimes a husband or a wife can express preferences about what they'd like their spouse to do without being controlling, fair to say.
Well, you see, where am I going wrong here? He has an opinion of what constitutes controlling behavior, and he's given examples that he feels are examples of that, and you're kind of sparring with him about it, and it really is, maybe you don't agree, maybe the jurors don't agree, but it seems to me as argumentative, and it's taken up a lot of time.
Did you understand Julie Jensen's family to live in Kenosha, that she had family there?
Yes, she did mention.
She had a brother that lived in town?
Yes.
You never met him prior to Julie's death, did you?
Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I don't remember.
You have no memory of ever meeting her brother who lived in Kenosha prior to her death, true?
Sure.
You have no memory of ever seeing her brother at her home during those years, right?
Yes.
That's correct?
Correct.
You did see Mr. Jensen's sister at the house from time to time, correct?
Yes, I did.
You saw his parents at the house from time to time?
Yes.
In this very first conversation that you had with Mrs. Jensen, she said she believed her husband was having an affair.
Yes.
Did she say anything other than the trips to Chicago as to the reason why she believed that?
No, she said his behave. She said that they argue and they argue like a normal family, but for the past few weeks, those arguments will be 3-4 times, very tense argument in the morning and the evening every time. And that's what she mentioned, that was started when he's got his new job.
Fair to say during this first conversation with you, she was miserable?
I don't know how to describe miserable, but she was crying. She was upset. She was disappointed. She was, she didn't look good.
You disagree with miserable?
Maybe she was miserable.
You recall testifying to that at the preliminary hearing? Page 9, line 4?
Yeah. Maybe she said, maybe she was miserable.
Well, that's what you saw as somebody who was miserable, right?
Yeah.
Julie told you that she suspected Mark was doing something on the computer.
Yes, she did.
She said she was vacuuming one day,
Yes.
right? And that's the time that she said she saw something on the computer, right?
Yeah, she
Well-
described it to me.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. Maybe you weren't. Go on. That's the time she described seeing the computer, right?
Yes.
And what she said to you was that Mark was in the room that had the computer in it, right?
Yes.
And you've been in the Jensen home. You knew which room that was, right?
Yes.
And that the door was 3/4 of the way closed, right?
Yes, that's what she described.
And as she was vacuuming with the door 3/4 of the way closed, she said she could see the screen of the computer,
Yes.
right? And so she was standing there to see what he was looking at, right?
Yes.
And is this when she described seeing websites about poisoning?
Yes.
And she claimed he was looking at sites on poisoning and she looked through the door.
Yeah, that's what she said.
And then as he was sitting there and noticed her, he reached over with his foot and shut the door.
Exactly correct. That's how she described it to me.
She also told you that Mark Jensen left the computer on,
Yes.
right? With what kind of information on the
There was
screen?
some poison sites or something, she was telling me.
And she saw it then?
Yes.
Mr. Voigt, I'll show you a photograph that's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 132. Do you recognize that as the office in which the Jensen computer was?
That's not his office, I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe, if I remember right, desk used to be sitting on this side. That, what I remember when I went there with him.
Excuse me, I didn't see where he was playing.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't either. That's helpful.
Well,
Let me-
later, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, Counsel.
Mr. Voigt,
Yes.
you do not recognize this as the office where the computer was?
No.
If the police took this photograph on the day of Julie Jensen's death, this isn't what you remembered
I
ever
don't
seeing?
remember. I remember actually the office, I think so, after Julie's death, because I went to Mark's house, because he was doing some trading for me on the computer. And I remember when I was sitting, where was his desk? That I remember. That was after Julie did. This, I do not remember. I know where the room is.
Hold on. Okay, you don't recognize this photograph.
I don't.
You don't know what this is.
Only thing I recognize from this room is the doors, the shades in his rooms, but, and I know which room is it. The first room when you walk into his house, on the left side, first door. You go through the hallway.
Is it your claim there was no computer in this room?
No, there is a computer in the picture, but I never seen in this room computer before. I wasn't going to their house like every day, but I don't remember. I'm telling you what Julie described it to me, how she was doing, what she was doing, and how the event happened.
I can't, I'm just trying to find out if you recognize this picture, and it sounds like you
No.
don't. Okay.
Hello? Hunter, would you give us on the record?
Sure.
Thanks.
Julie indicated to you that she was concerned that if she left Mark, she wouldn't get the kids.
Yes?
She was concerned that she would be viewed as unstable.
What she told me, she will be viewed as an unfit mother. That's what he repeated her a lot of times.
Did she say why she was worried that other people would view her as an unfit mother?
No, she never said that the other people, she said the Mark.
Well, you understand that someone other than Mark would make the ultimate decision as to what would happen with the Jensen kids if they split up, right?
Well, I'm just
Objection, Your Honor. It's irrelevant what this witness understood as to who would be making those decisions.
Sustained.
During the conversation, did you press Julie on that? Did you say
No,
anything?
I never pressed
Mr.
Julie.
Boyd, you have to let me finish my question.
Go ahead.
During these conversations, did you say anything to Julie Jensen about other people would make the decision, not Mark, about what happened with the kids?
Never did.
She was worried that other people might believe that she was losing her mind. She expressed that.
I don't remember that.
For what period of time did Julie, there was a period of time in which Julie was expressing to you that she wasn't eating anything, right?
Yes.
When did she say that?
I think so. She got like sick about 2 to 3 weeks before her death.
Mr. Voigt, you indicated on direct, and you were just suggesting it now, that 2 weeks before her death, she said she got sick, right?
Objection. That's a mischaracterization of the witness's testimony.
It is?
It is. He said 2 to 3 weeks.
Is it 2 weeks? 2 or 3 weeks? What is it?
I'll take a pick between 2 and 3.
I just want to know what the truth is, Mr. Voigt.
It's not, remember, this was 9 years ago. I'm telling the best of my knowledge. That's what I remember. And that's what I remember. It was 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. And it is 9 years ago. It's a long
Yeah.
time, right? You gave statements to Detective Ratsberg the day after, on December 4th, right?
Yes,
And things were much fresher in your mind then, right?
yes,
And you were suspicious when you talked to Detective Ratsberg on December 4th, right? You're suspicious about Mark Jensen?
I wasn't suspicious. I just said it, that Mark did it. And Mark poisoned her.
You were suspicious on December 4th, right?
Objection. The question's been asked and answered.
He volunteered something that wasn't his direct
The
answer.
objection's overruled.
You were suspicious, right, on December 4th, yes or no?
Yes,
And so you knew it was an important statement you were giving to Detective Ratsberg,
yes,
and you told him everything you could remember that was important, right?
yes, I did.
And he wrote down the information, right?
Yes, he did.
And you signed a statement, correct?
Yes,
You testified at a preliminary hearing in this case, correct?
yes,
That was back in 2002.
yes,
You testified to everything you could remember that you were asked about, right?
yes,
After the preliminary hearing in July of 2002, a typewritten statement was prepared for you that you signed, correct?
yes.
You signed that statement, true?
Yes, I signed whatever they gave me. Yes, I did.
And that also was as complete as you could make it in July 2002, right?
Well, I don't know if I can answer that, but, on the first statement,
Well, I'm not asking about the first statement right now, sir. Did you try to give as much information as you could in that July 2002 statement to
I was
Detective
saying
Ratsberg?
everything what I knew at the time, and what they asked me.
And then you testified in July 2007, right?
Yes, I did.
And prior to that testimony, you spoke with Mr. Jamboys, right?
Yes, I did.
You went over everything you knew, right?
I don't know if everything, but whatever they asked me. They asked me the question, I answered the question, to my best knowledge.
And at no time during that statement to Detective Ratsberg, December 4th, 1998, during the written statement that you gave in July 2002, during your preliminary hearing testimony in 2002, or during your testimony in July 2007, did you ever say anything about Julie telling you that she got sick and vomited 2 or 3 weeks before her death, right?
I did say that.
In
I
which
did say on the, I think on the first statement. In the first statement, I did say a lot of things. Mr. Rasbrick was in our house for over 2 hours.
Julie ever tell you that she had been treated for depression?
No, she never did.
Did she tell you why she went to the doctor on December 1st?
No, she never did.
Did she tell you why Mark wanted her to go to the doctor?
No, she just was telling the Mark wanted her to go to the doctor for the past few weeks.
You told Julie Jensen at some point that maybe she should call police, right?
I think so, I did. And her answer was that she's been already talking to the police.
She told you she called Officer Cosman and left a voicemail, right?
Yes, I think that she called the police department and he wasn't there.
Mr.
And that's what
Wojt?
she- Yeah.
Did she tell you that she called and left a voicemail for Officer Cosman?
Yes,
She said that Officer Cosman wouldn't be back for several days, right?
he'd be back like on Monday or something.
She said that she left a message for Mr. Cosman even though she feared not living through the weekend, right?
Yes, I think so.
She delivered to you a letter, correct?
Yes, she did.
She said, give it to the police in the event something happens to me, right?
Yes,
Did you suggest to her that a letter like that ought to be delivered to the police sooner?
we had a conversation before and which she told me she didn't want to, the police asked her to confront Mark, put the cameras in the house, and she didn't want to do this because what happened if the whole thing is Mark is playing with her?
Mr. Boyd, did you suggest to Julie that she should give that letter to the police instead of
Never
having you
did.
hold on?
Never did. She put it in my pocket and that was it.
And around the same time, she gave this film to your wife, right?
Yes,
Undeveloped film, right?
that you have to talk to my wife.
Were you home when Julie came over and retrieved the film?
No,
But Julie told you that at some point she came over to your house and got that film from your wife and brought it back to Officer Cosman, right?
no, she didn't.
Julie never told you about that?
No. My wife did, but she didn't.
Julie never came over to get the letter to give to Officer Cosman at any rate, right?
No.
And you say that Officer Cosman came back with the developed photos. That's what Julie told you, right?
Yes,
So he came back a second time, right?
yes,
So Julie told you he'd been there a first time when she gave him the photos and then came back the second time when they were already developed, right?
yes,
Officer Cosman, you saw him talking to Julie Jensen
yes, I did.
when he came back with those developed photos, right?
Yes,
It's your testimony that you saw him do the twirl around the ear to suggest
no, she did it.
she did that.
She did it as she was approaching me.
To suggest that Officer Cosman was saying
Yeah.
she was crazy.
Yeah, she was crazy. What do you want me to see? That's what's exactly what she said. What do you want me to see? It. I didn't see anything, you know. And then she said he thinks I'm crazy. That's
You
what she
said-
told me.
You said it was because the photos were blurry?
No, She didn't say it because he told her, I couldn't see anything on the photo. What do you want me to see?
Didn't you say something on direct examination about being a problem with the photos, that they're overexposed or that there was some problem with?
Yeah, there was something, she mentioned one that she took, I don't know how many films, there was about the flash or something when she was taking the screen, computer screen or something. So.
Did you ever see any such photo?
No, I never did.
You have no personal knowledge whether she ever took such a photo, right?
Only I did see in those rolls of films in my house.
But you have no specific information as to what she took photos of, right?
No.
Did you ever go to Julie Jensen's house to look at the computer?
No, didn't.
Did she ever show you the computer?
No.
Did she ever try to show you any of these syringes that supposedly exist?
No.
Did she ever try to show you any of Mark's notes?
No.
All the information about the marital problems and everything else, that all came from Julie, right?
And some of it came from Mark.
Well, you weren't talking to Mark in the fall of 1998, right?
I think so I did once when I told you they had a big argument about going that vacation trip. And Julie didn't want to go, and she gave me why she didn't want to go, and he was upset that she didn't want to go. And
It's Julie that was giving you the information about the marriage, right? She talked to you dozens of times about the marriage, right?
yes, she did.
Dozens of times, right?
Yes,
Mark maybe talked to you once, right?
yes, I would say yes.
And Mark's concern was that they didn't go on some trip that he wanted to go on with his wife, right?
Yes.
She rejected all of your offers of assistance, true?
Yes, she did.
That first day when you saw Julie Jensen outside, she was outside, right?
Yes,
She was on her porch
on the front porch, yes,
by herself
by herself.
in the month of October, right?
Yep.
She knew what time you left for work each day, right?
Yeah,
You'd either leave before rush hour or right after what you considered rush hour, right?
I used to leave around 9:15, no later than 9:30.
She was aware of that from being your neighbor for 6 or
I
7
really
years.
don't know if she was aware of that. And I know one thing, that me and Mark used to leave like 8:45
Judge,
or
this is beyond the
8:30.
scope of the question.
You ask another question.
Are you saying she wasn't aware of what time you left each day?
Because I used to go different times every day. Sometimes I will go this time, sometimes I will leave 5 in the morning, sometimes I'll leave at 11. Depends on which occasion I used to do work.
Julie, was there any particular reason that you could ascertain as to why Julie would be crying outside, or did she tell you why she was crying outside?
That Mark just left to work. They had a big argument, and she was just sitting out there. I don't know why she was sitting out there. I didn't see the argument. I just saw Julie sit spread in the front of the railing and crying.
But guess what I'm inquiring, Mr. Boyd, is she could have been doing this crying inside, right?
Objection
don't
calls
know.
for speculation.
Overall.
I don't know. How could I know?
Well, Mark wasn't inside, right?
I really don't know. I'm telling you what I seen.
Well, you just told me that you saw that Mark had just left.
No, I never said that.
You said that they had an
What
argument.
Julie told me. I didn't see Mark leave.
Julie told you Mark had gone to work, correct?
Yes, correct.
She wasn't lying. She didn't say she was locked out of that house, right?
No, she never mentioned a word about it.
She seemed to want to get your attention. Would that be fair to say?
No,
You don't believe that was the case?
I don't believe it, because when I approached her, she didn't want to even talk to me.
Well, she protested for a little while, and then she did talk to you, correct?
Yes, she did, later.
You talked to her almost daily after that, right?
Yes, I did talk to her daily, sometimes twice. Yes, sometimes even more.
She seemed to be outside quite often when you were either going to work or coming home from work, fair to say?
Well, that's what I said before, that I kind of noticed that sometimes I felt like she was waiting for me to say something.
And she seemed to be waiting outside for you, right?
Outside, yes.
And she seemed to know when would be a good time to try to wait for you outside, right?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation on the part of this witness. And how long is this going to go on? This is,
I object to this speaking.
this is,
I object to
Just please. The objection's overruled.
Remember the question?
Yeah, repeat the question, please.
Could I have that read back, please?
Question, and she seemed to know when would be a good time to try to wait for you outside, right?
No.
And this was the month of November?
This is
Object to the-
repetitive. Any other questions, Mr. Albee?
Yes, I do. I'm
Go ahead.
moving on to a different subject.
Go ahead.
Did Julie express any anger about this affair to you? That she suspected Mark of having?
Well, she was upset about it, yes, she was.
Did she express anger?
No, she didn't. I don't know how you express it, but she never swear or call him names or anything. No, she was just, she was very upset about it. She wasn't that much upset that he's having an affair, that she just suspect him that he's having an affair. I mean, she never say bad thing about Mark at that time, at that moment. She just was suspecting him.
Well, she was saying bad things about him wanting her to work and things like that, right?
No, it wasn't a bad thing. She's like, he's pushing me. He forcing me to go get a job. He forcing me to leave the Douglas. And the Douglas was her life. The kids, she loved to stay home with the kids. And they had some kind of agreement that she do this and she can stay home.
During this first statement to Detective Ratsburg, you had nothing to say about any high five, true?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember.
You don't think what?
I don't remember.
objection, Your Honor, it's improper cross-examination. Anyway, the absence of an entry in a prior statement does not constitute a prior inconsistent statement.
A statement which one would think would be stated in a prior statement and is not stated can be of benefit to the finder of fact. The objection's overruled.
Mr. Boyd, let me show you Defendant's Exhibit 133.
Excuse me, counsel, what is that?
It's the handwritten statement from December 4th. Mr. Boyd, is that, in fact, what that is the statement that Detective Ratsburg wrote out for you based on your
Yes, that's
interview?
the,
Based on your interview on December 4th, 1998?
that's the statement, yes.
That was the day after Julie Jensen's death?
Yes.
Nowhere in that statement do you say anything about Julie Jensen getting sick and vomiting 2 to 3 weeks before her death, true?
In the statement, yes. No, there's nothing on it, he put it there.
There's no statement in which you ever said anything about vomiting,
Like I
right?
said, I made this testimony, it was over 2 hours testimony. There's a lot of stuff where I talk about it, it's not in it. If this is 2 hours, what I was saying to my wife, it's wrong. There's more stuff, more detail, but at that point, I know Mr. Radsberg pointed to us that Julie Jensen wasn't poisoned. So it's like there's no suspicious or nothing. This happened. We were all surprised what happened. We didn't know it's going to happen that soon.
Mr. Voigt, is the answer you did not put, it's correct, you did not put anything about vomiting or her getting sick in that statement, correct?
There's nothing in it.
And there's nothing in any statement you've given prior to today, right?
It's possible,
And there's nothing in any testimony you've given prior to today, right?
right?
And now it's 9 years later, and this is the first time in any court or any law enforcement statement that you've said anything about her vomiting and being sick, true?
Well, there was one statement, I talked to someone that Julie was sick and she was afraid to eat anything in the house. And she went to the local store, advised to go get the food, and she actually, I think she did. There was one previous testimony, I don't know which one, but I did talk to her about it.
Well, you've stated that Julie did not want to eat any food in the house, right?
At some point, yes.
Right. I mean, that's what you're testifying to today. Julie did not want to eat any food in the house.
There was,
Mr.
that was
Boyd,
about 2 weeks before her death.
is that correct? Julie told you she did not want to eat any food in the house
At that time, correct, at that time.
in late November of 1998,
Like I said, it was like 2 weeks before her death.
which would be late November of 1998, right?
It will be the mid.
She told you she was refusing to eat any food that was in the house, right?
She was refusing to eat any stuff that Mark will give it to her.
And you told her, if you're scared to eat anything in the house, go to White Hen?
Yes,
And that's what she did. She went to White Hen to get food.
I think she did, because she said she went and got a sandwich or something. Because I remember she was shaking and crying, and she said, I didn't eat nothing for 2 days. Because she was scared to eat anything in the house.
Right.
And I'm sure this is in one of my statements, 100%.
And what she said is she was scared to eat anything in the house,
Yes.
right? That's why she went to White Hen, true?
At that time, like I said, that 2 weeks before her death.
And that's why she went to White Hen, right?
Yeah, that's why she went to White Hat.
Thank you. And that statement, you also don't say anything about a high five, true?
Yes,
That is true?
it's true.
And you didn't say that in your statement in 2002, correct?
I mentioned that stuff before in the meeting with Mr. Jambord. I mentioned with Mr. Ransford.
Is there any written statement anywhere?
No, it isn't.
That wasn't something that you ever testified to until this year, right?
No, like I repeated myself again, it's not in the statement, but I did say it before. I don't know why it isn't in it, but I did say it.
It's not in any statement or testimony until this year.
Testimony this year, yes.
Right, that's when you first.
Yes, that's where it first got recorded.
And that was 9 years after the fact.
Yes.
True?
True.
I think I'm done. Did Julie ever tell you about her affair?
No, she never did.
That's all I have.
Any redirect?
Oh, yes. Did Julie tell you why she didn't want to go on the trip, that Mark was upset that she wouldn't go on?
Oh, yes, she did.
What did she tell you?
Her side of the story was, well, when she find out our Mark plans on this trip, that he made the plans, I think, with a couple other people from his work and his wife, that he already arranged, put Douglas someplace in the hotel with the babysitter, some strange person. She was really upset about it, and that's what she said. And that's what they go from bar to bar. They go to the strip clubs, all this other thing to 3 in the morning. I'm not into it. I'm not gonna do it. This is not my type of vacation with the kids.
Now, council raised the issue about whether or not Mr. Jensen, Mark Jensen, was controlling or not. Do you recall a time when Julie's father came to visit?
Yes.
Objection, motion in limine.
Your Honor, this was brought out on cross-examination.
Motion in limine was granted.
Yeah, but this was, and there's such a thing as opening a door, Your Honor, and here were the questions on
Move
cross-examination.
on to something else, we'll talk about it.
You had been in the Jensen residence, or had you been in the Jensen residence in the, say, 3 or 4 or 5 months before Julie died?
Yes, I've been.
Do you recall, as you're sitting here today, ever seeing the computer in the Jensen residence before, in the months preceding?
Yeah, I think so we did, because we did some work for Jensen. So the whole place was kind of mess and everything, but
Now, did you know which room the computer was in?
yes,
Which room was the computer in?
there was the first room on the left when you walk into the front door.
So directing your attention to Defense Exhibit 132, the photograph here, can you tell us whether or not that is the room that is depicted in that photograph?
I'm really not positive this is the room. If this is the room, I know that I remember the carpet in this room because they changed the rest of the house was blue. The green was in Mark's room, his office when we did the work for him.
So that color, that carpeting is the same
Yes.
color. And you say it's Mark's room.
Mark's room.
What caused you to conclude that it was Mark's room? that had
Because-
been carpeted?
I object to his
Because that was his
speculation about that.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Rephrase your question.
Okay. What was it about the room that caused you to believe that it was Mark's room?
And I object to his knowledge about the subject.
So tell us what you know about the room that, at least insofar as it caused you to believe it was Mark's room.
Well, first of all, it's a green carpet. I remember when Mark and Julie asked me about the carpet guy to install carpet in their house, and I suggested somebody from Chicago, one of my installers. They came out and they picked the carpet. They did it for them, and one of the things was when they were installing the carpet, Mark's room was green, the middle of the room, their den was blue, and Julie looked at the carpet and she wasn't sure if that was the color was Mark wanted, and she was really kind of scared, afraid, you know. And she called Mark, and Mark like show up in, I would say, in a half hour to determine, and that's what kind of stuck with me. That green carpet, I'm sure it's the first room on the left is his office.
So the first room on the left, as you're going down the hallway? Or?
Yeah, going to the hallway, you go to the front door, you turn to the left. There's the first room on the left side, that's his office.
And when you saw a computer in that house, which room was it in?
This was in this room.
Now,
I'm sorry, what was the answer?
was in this room.
The room in the photograph?
Yeah, it was in the room that you just described, the first room on the left as you're going down the hallway.
Yeah.
Now, looking at Exhibit D132 again, do you recognize anything in that photograph?
Wood shades, that's the only thing I recognize. I do not recognize how the furniture was set up. I do recognize the later setup of the room, but at that, no. I do
You
not.
say that you recognize the later setup in the room?
Yeah, because I was there later after Julie just died.
Oh, and so it was a ring. So you remember what the room looked like after Julie's death?
Yes.
And did it look like this room, or was it a different room, or don't you remember?
No, it was the same room, but different layout because the computer was sitting right on the left. If I remember correctly, there was a desk, and the computer was sitting right here on this side.
Was the computer sitting in a place where it was closer to the door, or about the same distance from the door that
It's
it's
about
depicted
the
there?
same, a little bit closer. A little closer.
Do you recognize the furniture at all?
No, I don't. Because like I said, when we worked there, when I was there, it was, quite a bit chaos when they were putting hardwood floors, they replaced the carpet, so everything was mess.
Now, and to get back to your impressions, or possible or alleged impressions about who or who was not controlling in that relationship, do you remember seeing some episodes where Julie was apparently trying to do something that she was supposed to do in order to please Mark, or because Mark expected her to do it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There was,
Give us some examples of that.
Julie used to always complain because, when Mark would leave to work, kind of laugh about it. It was a daily thing that she would have that list of chores to do, and he will expect her to do it. She will have to go to his work, pick up his car, take for oil change, bring it back. In the meantime, do all her other chores, cut the grass. One of the times I remember when she was sitting in the back and she couldn't start her lawnmowers and she was crying, and I came out and I helped her, and she was like, all upset and everything. I have to do this because Mark expected me to do by the time he gets home. One day I remember she was backing up the boat. She blocked the whole traffic.
Why don't you ask another question?
Okay, well, tell me about the time that she was backing up the boat.
The same thing. It's like she was very upset why I'm doing this, his stupid boat, why I have to go take it to the Jelinski for service, why he cannot do it himself, because he wants this boat ready by the time he gets home.
Do you remember a time when there was a deck being constructed in the Jensen backyard?
Yes.
Tell the jury about the time that you recall, what you remember about this deck being constructed in the backyard.
We were still doing some.
I'm going to object at this point. And, well, there's a relevance objection, I guess, is the basis for it.
It doesn't strike me as being particularly relevant.
Your Honor, this was, again, it was brought out on cross-examination when counsel was asking this witness about episodes that caused him to conclude that Mark Jensen was a controlling spouse.
But it strikes me that we're getting into matters that are not going to be particularly helpful to the jury in deciding the case, which ultimately is the relevance issue. So go on to something else.
Well, Your Honor, may counsel approach that on one, there's two issues, because there's only two things I have left that I want to talk to this witness about.
Can you talk about them and then have the conference after?
Well, not without probably violating a court order. I'm willing to do that, but I just have to...
Well, I'd
promise not to find
actually
me
rather you
contempt.
didn't.
I'm sorry, what?
Come forward. Take a short break. Please don't talk about the case during the break. It'll be very short.
Please, all right.
Mr. Jenwitz.
You want me to do okay. Did you want me to make an offer of proof by asking this witness questions, or do you want me to make a statement?
Why don't you make a statement?
Okay. Your Honor, it's my understanding that if I were permitted to ask this witness the question about the time when when Julie Jensen's father came to visit the Jensens, Mark Jensen, and by the way, he was dying of cancer. He was very, very ill. He was dying of cancer. He wanted to spend some time with his daughter and his grandchildren. And Mark made life so miserable in the house that he moved out after a few days and went to a hotel. And I believe this witness can attest to the fact that that happened, and further, it can attest to the fact that Julie was very upset, and that Mark had said, "Why can't he go stay at a Motel 6 or something like that?" And I think that is plainly rebuts the inference that counsel was trying to raise in his cross-examination of this witness that, oh, well, Julie wouldn't have her family over. Her family wasn't permitted to come over. Her family wasn't welcome in that house. And her brothers can attest to Paul can attest to the fact about how they felt going to that house. But in particular, this episode where her father is in the last few years of his life, he's ill, he's cancer-stricken, he wants to spend time with his wife and grandchildren, but Mark Jensen wouldn't allow it to happen. And this witness has evidence concerning that point. And, you know, it's fair, it certainly is a fair response to the cross-examination, Your Honor. And I don't think that had you heard that cross-examination and then the motion in limine was brought up, there's no way you would have granted a motion in limine after counsel opened that kind of a door.
Now it's your turn, Mr. Albee.
Judge, this has no relevance. It's unfairly prejudicial.
Then why did you pursue it on your cross?
Because that's what he told Detective Ratsberg, because there's this, that he said controlling, and at every previous hearing, I'd say, are you what did you observe that was controlling? And he'd say, I never observed any controlling conduct. This is one of the biggest problems of this whole confrontation hearsay forfeiture issue, is that all these statements over time that Julie Jensen makes, I don't even understand her father to have stayed any time there or decided to. But all this stuff, 15 years ago or 12 years ago, statements for which Mr. Wojt would have no reason to remember verbatim, and which might be greatly exaggerated as often complaints about spouses are. I mean, to have all these just random allegations that she's ever made about, oh, he's making me cut the lawn. I mean, come on.
I have to tell you that when you were pursuing this area of inquiry during your cross-examination, you, if I understood right, you were repeatedly demanding the witness to give you instances of controlling behavior by the accused. And I thought at the time, is this trial ever going to end? And now it seems to me that he's entitled to go into matters that the witness may not have remembered during your examination. Well, where am I going wrong? Well, I actually interrupted you, I think, on my own motion, because I thought, I was thinking in terms of finishing the case at some time, that why were you pressing the issue about having him not just recite prior incidents, but justify his conclusion about being controlling? Where am I going wrong?
And I wasn't allowed to challenge those, so I don't think there's the probative value of introducing these. I of course went into that expecting that I'd get the same answers as the last hearing from this witness. That didn't happen. But again, it's one thing if he observed what he observed, and I think that's what I was asking, is what did you observe? This is what he hears from Julie. And
No, please.
And these statements about his father, I mean, it's just, all I say is it's not true, and we get off on a tangent that's a waste of time.
You know, I have to say, this is like the third time today that you've told me what the truth is. You know, I'm not allowed to make conclusions about what the truth is. That's not part of my job. That's for them. I'm just here to make sure that you get a chance to present what you claim to be the truth, and he has a right to present what he claims to be the truth.
Well, I felt like, I felt like it was the flip side when we were talking about the Dr. Long issue, is that we had to determine the truth before I'd be able to go into it. Now I feel it's the other way.
I'm afraid you're still not understanding what I'm saying on the Dr. Long issue, but go ahead.
But I think these kind of items are unfairly prejudicial. I think it's a problem with, and if the court wants to find I open up the door, that's fine. I think that kind of thing is just bound to happen because of the hearsay rules we're dealing with, where all sorts of allegations without any backup that Julie Jensen made any time over the 7 years these people were neighbors. Anything she had to say that was bad can be regurgitated.
You know, I got to tell you, I don't think it's fair to blame the hearsay rules for relevance determinations. And confrontation. We were talking different rules. What are the two incidents you want to go into? One is the father coming over. What's the other one?
The other one is where Mrs. Jensen was, I think, 7 or 8 months pregnant, and they were building a deck in the backyard, and Mr. Jensen had gone to work and instructed his pregnant wife to nail down the deck. And she was having considerable difficulty with that. I mean, as most any pregnant woman would. And that is clearly indicative, Your Honor, of an abusive and controlling relationship.
Well, and the concern that I have is it's really being offered to prove that the defendant is a bad person.
It's actually being offered to rebut the cross-examination that was brought out. And you know, Your Honor, this was something that was inquired into, and I didn't understand why he was going on and on and on about it, but that's what he did. He went on and on and on with this witness on cross-examination, and now you're going to foreclose me from, and by the way, I think I'm being much more succinct than defense counsel is in the way that I'm conducting my examinations. I've spent a lot less time on this than the defense counsel has. And I certainly should be permitted to draw an accurate picture, or actually allow this witness to draw an accurate picture about what happened. And insofar as counsel is complaining about the inability of Julie Jensen to be here and testify about what happened,
please,
we know who's responsible for that.
No, well, let's just move ahead. You have 2 sentences you can respond. 2 sentences.
No, thank you.
Did it in one. Well, it was gone into by the defense, and I think rather extensively in challenging the witness, and I'm going to allow it, but it must be kept briefer. I reserve the right to stop it in mid-question.
Oh, Your Honor, I accept that, and I don't think the court's got complaints about my brevity or lack thereof.
All right. Don't ask. Let's ask the jury to come back. Do you have other areas of inquiry for this witness?
He's already done enough.
I did take a look at the Lind case. We'll talk about it in a minute. All right, the objection's been overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Jeffers.
Mr. Wojt, I think the question on the table related to a time when there was a deck being constructed in the backyard of the Jensen residence. Can you tell the jury about your recollection of that episode?
Yeah, I was doing good construction. I think so. As soon as we finished the construction of the house, we were building, my crew, on the back of the house, the garage. And at the same time, Julie Jensen was working on her side of a yard, on the backyard, taking apart existing, I think so, patio around the swimming pool.
And what condition was she in at the time?
Well, that was the funny thing. She was pregnant, and the workers, I remember they were just kind of laughing about it, because she was sitting in the backyard with a hammer, pulling out nails from usable lumber she took apart, and she was flipping. She didn't have enough power. She was falling down. She was upset. She was nervous. She cried.
And did she indicate to you why she was doing this at this time?
Yes, she did.
What did she tell you?
She said that that's what Marx wanted her to do. That's what she have to contribute to the house. That was one of the thinks she have to do it. He told her to do it.
And your recollection is she was how far along in her pregnancy at that time?
Well, she was, I don't know how far was she, but you will notice that she was pregnant and her struggle, what she was doing, and she was very upset about it.
Now, tell me about the episode insofar as you can remember it, when Julie's father came to visit the Jensen household.
Yeah, I think that was fall, the year before, I think so, same year or Julie died, or a year before she died. It was in the fall, I remember. That he was in the front with, they had a dog, I think Nikki or Mickey, and her father was taking for a walk, and then Julie introduced him. That's her father, and then she told me later that he's got the cancer. He's gonna die in weeks, and that was I think so one of the days. And the second day we had another conversation, and she told me that Mark wants her father move out of the house because he cannot take this anymore, have him stay there. And he's supposed to stay with her a week, and this was like the second day. He told her to tell the father, take him someplace to the hotel. He didn't want him in the house.
And did you have any did you have any conversation with Mark Jensen about that? Did Mark Jensen ever say anything to you about that?
No.
So that's the conversation was between you and Julie?
Yeah,
And did the father stay in the house or did he leave?
he leave.
And how much time after was that second conversation with Julie that Mark's father, or that Julie's father had to leave?
I think it was like next day or something. I didn't see.
Thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Wojt, this thing about the deck, when was that?
I know my house was constructed at the time. I don't think so. I know she was pregnant with Douglas, with the younger son at the time. I don't know what year was it, and I was building the garage in the back. There was 4 or 5 different people, carpenters.
When were you building the garage in the back?
That's why I said it was 92 or 93. I don't,
You built that right after you finished your house,
Yes.
92 or 93.
Yes.
And what time of year was this?
I don't remember. I really don't remember. I know it's got to be summer or fall because everything was green at that time. Because I remember her outside, just falling, sitting there, and especially these guys had the lunch, they were just making joke about it.
So you think maybe it was like August or something like that?
It's possible. I really cannot tell you what time it was, what month it was.
Was this a patio or a deck?
There was a deck around the swimming pool area what they had. She was, if I remember correct, she was doing all these railings all the way around it, all the way around the patio. She was pulling the nails from the old pickers. And
She was pretty far along in this pregnancy?
She was at that moment, she was cleaning up all old nails from the usable material.
I said she was pretty far along in this pregnancy?
Like I told you, I'm not an expert, but I see her pregnant. She was pregnant pretty far.
This is just a couple months before she gave birth to Douglas?
I really don't remember. I really don't remember.
So your best guess is August of 1992 or 1993? If it was late summer, does that help you determine if it
No,
was 92
what I
or
said is,
93?
no, I cannot commit to the date or month. I know if I can go back to my, maybe my statements or my workers when I paid them or something, I can probably dig it up about what time and when we built this garage. positive. But it was summer for sure, because I remember she was in the back, it was everything green, she was on the lawn, she was, you know,
They were using the pool?
I don't remember.
But did you?
I don't think so, no, they did not use the pool at the time. We didn't see it. It's, and then again, at that time, we didn't live there. I don't think so we lived there.
Pardon?
I know,
What did you say?
I don't think so the time that we lived there, you know, like full-time.
That you weren't living there full-time?
Yeah.
When did you begin living there full-time?
I think so it was 92, or I just, because I don't recall my wife being there at the time.
Okay, so you think it was before you moved in
Yeah.
full-time in 92?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I know she was pregnant. I know, and then some of the workers, they went and helped her doing some work. Remember, we let her use Pestle nail gun. We teach her how to use it, so she could kind of surprise Mark how much she done that day more than he expect her.
And was she showing a lot? I mean, when you're talking about
Yeah.
pregnant, I mean, she was big?
Yeah, because I remember when she was sitting on that board trying to pull the nail, she was just flipping over because she was pretty
Because
excited.
her stomach was so
Yeah,
big?
yeah. It's,
Do you know what her son Douglas's date of birth is?
no, I don't.
Do you know whether it's March 12th, 1995?
I really don't know. I know she was pregnant at the time.
Wanted to ask you, the last time you spoke with Julie was Sunday or Monday?
I think so, I did briefly talk to her on Monday.
And on Tuesday is the day that that your wife spoke with Julie?
I think so she did.
I'm sorry, which
I think so she did. You have to ask
day?
her.
I'm sorry.
I think so she did.
I know, I'm asking which day she spoke with Julie.
I really don't know.
Well, your wife had told you about one day that week where she'd spoken to Julie, right?
Yes, she did. She told me there was, I think so, one time she told me Judy came to the house, pick up this, drop off the movies. The second time, pick up the movies. Then, one time, I think so was Wednesday, she called her.
Okay.
She,
Is the telephone call is Wednesday?
I think so it's Wednesday was.
All right. And the same day as the telephone call is the day that you saw Mr. Jensen leaving around 9 or 9:15.
I think so it was next day. I didn't see him leaving. I saw him walking from his cars to his house. That was the day Julie died. I did see him walking. I can describe how he was dressed. And that's what kind of was surprised to me, that he wouldn't even hide or nothing.
Well, was that sometime when he was coming in or sometime when he was leaving, Mr. Voigt?
I think so he was coming in. I think so. I don't know. I just, like I said, I saw him going from the car to the house. I don't know what he was doing, but he was coming. It was about 9:15 when I was getting ready to go to Chicago. And he was going from his truck to his house.
And your best guess as to which day that was?
I think so it was Thursday that Julie died.
This is the 9 years ago.
Yes. Yes, I remember that. I remember when I passed him. I remember especially the lights on
Mr.
the
Boyd,
house.
there's no question before you. That's all I have.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
You may step down, sir. Thank you. Let's break. We are going to do some legal business here for the next half hour or so. And I'll ask that you return tomorrow at the usual time. And please don't listen to, watch, or read any account of the trial. And have a great evening.